ordered to conquer Earth. They came with doctrine. We answered with timing. 2,000 alien hulls slid out of fold space like a slow-motion avalanche. Massive, black, and arrogant. The kind of ships built to make surrender feel sensible. Their shadows didn't fall like shadows. They pressed. Inside the United Earth Defense Coordination Center, bunkered deep under a mountain that never shows up on maps, Admiral Park Deho watched the tactical sphere fill with hostile geometry. The room smelled like ozone, coffee, and people trying not to breathe too loudly. A junior controller whispered, "That's all of them." Park didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone knew what all of them meant. On the comm wall, the alien broadcast finally cut through, translated into every human language at once, sterile and absolute. "Surrender your command authority. Power down all weapons. You will be annexed." The alien voice paused, like it expected terror, pleading, maybe a diplomatic poem. Earth gave them silence. Not fear silence, not confusion silence. The kind of silence that happens right before a boxer throws the shot he's been drilling for 3 months. Park's eyes moved once, to a small green icon labeled Project Deep Strike, Ready. And somewhere above, in the black between Earth and the invaders, a timer hit 0 hours, 0 minutes, 10 seconds. Setup. The misread. The Caltheran Stellar Empire had a system. Systems were their religion. They'd conquered 847 worlds, cataloged them, really. They didn't see civilizations. They saw compliance curves. You arrive, you broadcast, you demonstrate force, you accept surrender, you install governors, you move on. Efficient, clean, predictable. Admiral Vexar, Supreme Fleet Executor, sat in his command cradle and looked at Earth the way a man looks at a rusted lock. Pre-industrial behavioral patterns, his intelligence officer reported. Persistent internal conflict. Fragmented governance, primitive propulsion, low orbital cohesion. Vexar's mandibular plates flexed, Caltheran for amusement. So they will kneel. They have a digital network, the officer added, almost apologetic. Wide information access. This sometimes produces unpredictability. Vexar dismissed it with a gesture. Information does not equal discipline. That was the misread. That was the entire war in one sentence. Humans weren't underestimated because they were weak. Humans were underestimated because they didn't look unified, because their arguments were loud, their cultures messy, their governments imperfect. But the Caltherans didn't understand a species that fights each other all day and still locks arms when something from the sky decides it owns the planet. 3 months earlier, a deep space listening array in the Kuiper Belt caught a pattern, an Empire signature fold ripple, the kind you only see from a civilization that thinks it's entitled to other people's air. The first meeting at UEDCC wasn't heroic, it was grim. Admiral Park Deho put the threat on the table. Intelligence said Earth couldn't win a conventional fight, not with ships, not with missiles, not with lasers, not with anything that requires more metal than the other guy. And that's when Dr. Choi Min, quiet, precise, and irritatingly calm, said the sentence that changed history. Then we don't fight them conventionally. In the back of the room, Dame, old Colonial Defense Force Marine, retired and still built like a bad decision, laughed once. "Doc," he said, "you got a plan that doesn't involve us throwing rocks at gods?" Choi Min didn't blink. "I have a plan that involves making gods bleed on the inside." OODA loop in action. Observe, silence isn't confusion. The alien surrender broadcast echoed across Earth's public channels. News feeds carried it, social media clipped it, talk shows tried to monetize it, conspiracy accounts tried to sell vitamins about it. But inside UEDCC, the response was sterile professionalism. Lila stood at the edge of the operations floor, teacher at the Colonial Defense Academy, former Marine CQB instructor, the kind of woman who could correct your stance with 1 word and break your confidence with 2. She'd been pulled in because Park wanted trainers as much as strategists, people who understood pressure. Daniel, her husband, still active special forces, leaned against a console with that relaxed posture that only exists when someone has already accepted the worst-case scenario. Dame sat on a metal chair like it owed him money. He wasn't there for comfort. He was there because Park trusted him to say what nobody else would. Park watched the alien fleet's formation tighten. Their ships didn't scatter. They didn't probe. They didn't search. They assumed. That's doctrine, Daniel murmured. They don't think they need to adapt. Lila's eyes tracked the fleet's orientation vectors. They're not looking for a trap, Dame grunted, because they never needed one. Park didn't let anyone indulge emotion. Report, a controller called out. Fleet entering stable orbit band, 2,000 vessels, no dispersal, no decoys, no electronic warfare screen. They're broadcasting surrender terms like it's a ceremony. Choi Min, hands clasped behind his back, said softly, "They are announcing, not assessing." Lila nodded. Ego buys us time. Dame smirked. Ego buys them a grave. Park stared at the green icon again. Deep strike. And he remembered the principle that had guided this whole preparation. The one Choi Min had insisted they name out loud so nobody drifted into fantasy. Hermetic principle? Cause and effect. Nothing happens to you. Things happen because something set the chain in motion. The Caltherans moved first. Earth's job was to decide what that motion would cost them. Orient. Stop trying to win their game. 3 months earlier, the first simulations ended in the same red screen catastrophe. Conventional defenses, vaporized, orbital platforms, overrun, fleet engagements, laughable. Even if Earth launched everything, it would be attrition against a civilization that treated shipyards like bakeries. Park's advisors argued for the usual options: diplomacy, stalling, alliances, deterrence, demonstration strikes. Choi Min waited until the room exhausted itself. Then he put a single diagram on the screen, a Caltheran heavy cruiser cross-section. He highlighted the fusion core, the reactor chambers, the containment lattice. Ships are not killed from the outside, he said. Not when their armor is layered to withstand astrophysical events. Ships die when you disrupt their heart. Someone snapped, "We can't get inside." Choi Min replied, "Then we stop thinking like we're outside." He introduced the physics like a man reading grocery items: quantum phase modulation, matter state slippage, timed resonance collapse. The room hated it because it sounded like science fiction. Dame loved it because it sounded like cheating. "So," Dame said, leaning forward, "you want bullets that walk through the front door and detonate in the kitchen." Choi Min nodded once. "Precisely. Project Deep Strike would produce 2,000 experimental quantum torpedoes, one for each ship. They would phase through hull layers, rematerialize at a calibrated point inside the reactor cavity, and detonate simultaneously. Not one after another. Not as many as we can. Simultaneously. Lila raised the real problem. Synchronization. Daniel added the second. Targeting. Their ships will be moving relative to each other, relative to Earth, relative to the torpedo's launch vectors. Park added the third. Manufacturing. 2,000 experimental weapons. In 3 months. Across a planet that can barely agree on what to eat for dinner. Choi Min didn't romanticize it. Then we make agreement a survival skill. That became Park's job, turning a fractured planet into one coordinated fist. This is where Lila earned her place. She didn't just train cadets, she trained systems. She helped Park restructure global coordination like a combat drill. Short comms, clear roles, redundant checks, no ego in the loop. She said it bluntly to a room full of national leaders. You don't need to love each other. You need to stop being stupid at the same time. Some didn't like her. Nobody argued with her. Choi Min named another lens, right there on the whiteboard. Hermetic principle, mentalism. The battle is won or lost in the mind first, through clarity, discipline, and refusal to hallucinate. Your fear will try to invent excuses, he told them. Your pride will try to invent miracles. We need neither. We need engineering. Decide. Accept the risk, burn the boats. Project Deep Strike had failure modes that made grown adults stare at the floor. If the phase timing was off, the torpedoes would rematerialize inside empty compartments. If the targeting drifted, they'd appear outside the hull and get swatted. If the synchronization lagged, the fleet would scatter after the first wave and Earth would die in the counterstrike. There was no, we'll try again. There was only, it works once, or it doesn't work at all. Park brought in Daniel to stress test the operational security. Daniel didn't talk like a politician. He talked like a man who clears rooms for a living. You leak this, Daniel said. They adapt. If they adapt, we lose. So we compartmentalize. We build like thieves. We communicate like surgeons. Nobody knows more than they need. Dame volunteered for the worst role, the ugly contingency. If it fails, Dame said, we need a second punch. Park stared at him. We don't have a second punch. Dame smiled without warmth. Then we build one made of people. Lila's voice cut in, controlled, sharp. Stop romanticizing sacrifice. If this fails, we're not heroes. We're ash. Dame held her gaze. Not romanticizing, accounting. Park made the decision with the weight of every city, every child, every argument humans ever had, because none of it matters if the planet becomes property. We proceed, Park said. Full commit, no half measures. Choi Min wrote the third principle on the board, underlined it twice. Hermetic principle, polarity. Fear and courage are not separate planets, they're ends of the same line. You slide along it by choice. You will feel fear, he said. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. Now slide. And Park, cold, exact, burned the boats. Every major manufacturing region converted. Every launch silo modernized. Every quantum lab pulled into a single shared architecture. The project didn't need belief. It needed execution. ACT, build the impossible without acting impressed. The next 90 days were not cinematic. They were brutal. Lila turned training halls into coordination centers. She ran comms under pressure drills with engineers who'd never been yelled at in their lives. She made them practice failure responses the way fighters practice slips. Automatic, clean, no panic. Daniel ran security like a quiet war. Counterintelligence sweeps, false projects, decoy communication channels, controlled leaks that went nowhere. People who thought they were spies got fed fiction until they were bored. Dame traveled where the work was nastiest. Launch crews, missile techs, underfunded facilities that suddenly mattered. He didn't motivate with speeches. He motivated with presence. When someone complained, Dame would just point upward. They don't care about your feelings. Tighten the bolt. Choi Min lived in equations and slept in 10-minute fragments. He didn't invent the torpedo. He iterated it, failure after failure, each one teaching the next adjustment. That's where the fourth principle became operational doctrine, hermetic principle, rhythm. Everything swings, energy, morale, attention. You don't deny rhythm, you ride it, work in pulses, recover on purpose, maintain tempo without burning out the machine. Park mandated it. Shift rotations like a campaign, recovery enforced, errors audited without punishment, because punishment makes liars and liars get you killed. And as the alien fleet closed in, Earth's final torpedo rolled off the line. 2,000, numbered, tagged, verified, locked into launch architecture. Deep strike was no longer theory. It was a trigger. Observe. The enemy's countdown. Back in the present, the Caltheran fleet finished positioning. Their broadcast changed tone. Less ceremony, more threat. Non-compliance recorded, final countdown to planetary suppression. A timer appeared on every hacked public screen across Earth. E00:05:00. The Caltherans wanted terror. They wanted the species to watch its own execution like a lesson. In UEDCC, nobody watched the public timer. They watched vectors, heat signatures, comm spikes, anything that suggested the fleet had noticed something. Lila leaned close to Park. They're not scanning deep. They're still in announcement mode. Daniel's eyes narrowed. They're disciplined, but they're rigid. Dame cracked his knuckles. Good. I hate when prey gets smart. Choi Min's voice stayed even. We require one thing. They remain in tight formation until 0. Park didn't blink. Probability? Choi Min hesitated, a rare crack. High, if they remain arrogant. Park took that in. Cause and effect. Their arrogance was not a vibe. It was a decision with consequences. The timer hit 0 hours, 1 minute, 0 seconds. A controller called out, Caltherin weapons charging, plasma arrays warming. Their forward wave is preparing to fire. Park's hand moved to the launch authorization pad. Biometric, dual key, redundant mechanical override, because humans trust machines but verify them like cynics. Lila exhaled once. Slow. Daniel's jaw set. Dame smiled like a man at the start bell. Choi Min whispered, to nobody and everybody. Hermetic principle, correspondence. As within, so without. The enemy's external formation reflects internal assumption. Break the assumption, break the formation. Park nodded once. Launch on my mark. Orient. One moment, not a battle. Most species thought war was volume. More ships, more fire, more screaming. Humans, at least the ones who survive, learn that war is often a moment you prepare for, then execute cleanly. Park didn't need a speech. He needed alignment. Confirm deep strike status, he ordered. Phase modules stable. Target locks aligned. Synchronization lattice green. Launch rails charged. The alien timer hit 0 hours, 0 minutes, 15 seconds. Lila's voice was almost too calm. If it works, it's over before they understand they're dead. Daniel added, if it doesn't, we won't have time to regret it. Dame leaned back. No regrets, just math. Choi Min's fingers hovered over a secondary calibration board. Micro adjustments for relative drift, because even arrogance drifts. Park's eyes flicked across the room. He saw fear, yes, but it was contained, disciplined, useful. That's polarity again. Fear as fuel, not as steering wheel. The timer hit 0 hours, 0 minutes, 5 seconds. Park spoke. Mark, act, deep strike. Earth didn't fire a barrage. Earth didn't light up the sky. Earth exhaled. 2,000 quantum torpedoes launched from hidden silos, orbital racks, submerged platforms, and disguised commercial satellites that had quietly become weapons. They didn't streak like old missiles. They didn't announce themselves. They simply disappeared into phase. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then, 2,000 Caltherin ships bloomed from the inside. Not like explosions on armor, like hearts rupturing, reactor containment failing, energy turning traitor, hulls splitting as internal pressure searched for escape. The fleet didn't take damage. It ceased being a fleet. The tactical sphere in UEDCC went from hostile geometry to a field of expanding debris markers in one synchronized instant. A controller's voice broke involuntarily. All targets neutralized. Park didn't celebrate. He didn't move. Because this wasn't victory yet. This was the opening reality check. Would there be survivors, automated response systems, secondary waves, hidden escorts? Lila scanned the debris field. No coherent power signatures. Daniel listened to deep space comms. No organized transmission, just static and emergency pings. Dame exhaled and finally stood. That's what arrogance looks like when it meets precision. Choi Min closed his eyes for half a beat. Rhythm, reset, then back to work. Park's voice stayed cold. Confirm full kill. Confirm no counterfire. Confirm no reinforcement signatures. Seconds passed like minutes. Then the final report. Confirmed fleet eliminated, 2,000 vessels destroyed. On public channels, the alien surrender demand kept playing because nobody had updated the script fast enough. Earth's silence ended, not with panic, with a single plane transmission from Park Daeho. This planet is not your inventory. Observe. The galaxy finally pays attention. The galaxy watched the Caltherin fleet vanish and did what arrogant empires always do when reality hits them in the mouth. They called it impossible. They called it a trick. They called it an accident. In the Caltheran capital, Emperor Zolthmore stared at the tactical feed until his attendants began to tremble. 2,000 ships, he whispered. Gone. His war council offered explanations to preserve his ego. Primitive weapons may have destabilized the fold corridor. Internal sabotage, a cosmic anomaly. Zolthmore's eyes snapped to them. Silence. Anomalies do not choose fusion cores. He rose. The room lowered itself around him. Mobilize the Second Armada, he ordered. 10,000 vessels. Full suppression doctrine. We will erase the insult. This was not strategy. This was wounded pride wearing a crown. Cause and effect again. They started this, now they would escalate it. And Earth had just become something the galaxy hates. Unpredictable. Orient. Ambassador Song Ji-hyun goes to war without firing. The Galactic Council convened under false neutrality, an amphitheater of species who called themselves civilized because they outsourced violence. Ambassador Song Ji-hyun stood alone at the center dais. No armor, no weapon, just posture and voice. Another kind of combat. The Council demanded explanation. You destroyed an Imperial fleet without warning. This is destabilizing. Song's expression didn't change. They arrived with an annexation demand. They are the Caltheran Empire, one delegate hissed. Their dominion is law. Song tilted her head slightly, like Lila correcting a student. That's not law. That's entitlement with a uniform. Murmurs. Threat assessments updating in real time. Song continued, measured. Earth did not seek conflict. Earth prepared because conflict was brought to our doorstep. We executed a defensive strike to prevent planetary suppression. A counselor leaned forward. You claim self-defense, yet you employed unprecedented technology. Song's eyes narrowed. Yes, because we were outmatched. We did what humans do when cornered. Which is? Song didn't smile, but the room felt the edge of it. We adapt. This was mentalism at a diplomatic scale. Control the frame, control the meaning. The Council wanted Earth labeled aggressor so they could sleep at night. Song refused the label. Behind the scenes, Daniel ran security on the delegation. Lila trained embassy staff in situational awareness like they were going into a hostile neighborhood, because they were. Dame wasn't supposed to be there. He was retired, officially, but he showed up anyway, leaning against a bulkhead outside the chamber, looking like a man who'd already decided how to get Song out if the Council tried something stupid. He muttered to Daniel, "These people talk like words stop plasma." Daniel replied, "Words stop wars when the other side still has options." Dame snorted, "Then we better make sure they believe we do." Decide. Build the second knife. Back on Earth, Park didn't pretend the war was over. One fleet dead, he told his commanders. Means the next one will be smarter. Choi Min agreed. They will disperse. They will deploy counterphase fields. They will begin hunting for the mechanism. Park made the next decision. Earth would not sit and wait to be studied. We build Deep Strike 2, he said, and we build phase shift capability into our own hulls. Lila raised a hand. That changes doctrine. If we can phase, we can maneuver through blockades. We can enter and exit fights on our terms. Daniel added, and it makes us look like a threat to everyone. Dame's grin was thin. We already are. Might as well be competent about it. Park didn't romanticize it. He wrote the burden plainly. If we become powerful enough to stop empires, we become the kind of power everyone fears. That's correspondence again. Your external capability mirrors internal discipline or internal chaos. Power without discipline becomes tyranny. Humans had to prove they weren't just swapping costumes with the Caltherans. So Park embedded rules, limits, oversight, transparency where possible without compromising survival. Because the goal wasn't conquest. The goal was to make conquest too expensive to attempt. Act. The war spreads, and humans keep moving. The Second Armada came, larger, dispersed, layered with countermeasures. Earth responded with a different kind of warfare, not brute force, but tempo, deception, and selective violence. Phase torpedoes evolved into phase nets. Deep strike became deep strike patterns, multiple synchronized moments instead of one. Earth ships learned to blink through predictable kill zones, reappearing where Caltheran doctrine said they couldn't be. Humans began liberating systems the Caltherans had cataloged as compliant, not with speeches, by destroying control nodes, supply chains, and the psychological scaffolding of empire. The galaxy watched, disturbed. Earth didn't invade for tribute. Earth invaded to dismantle the machine that would never stop coming otherwise. Admiral Park Daho stood before his staff one night, the exhaustion finally visible. "We didn't ask to be a military power," he said, "but we were drafted by reality." Lila listened, arms crossed. Daniel stood behind her, quiet. Dame leaned in the corner like a shadow with opinions. Park continued. "We end this by removing the Caltherans' belief that they can take worlds without consequence. That is the only peace they understand." Choi Min added, almost gently. "Hermetic principle, vibration. Everything has frequency, fear, confidence, coordination. We raised ours. We disrupted theirs." Dame chuckled. "Doc just said we outclassed their vibe in scientist language." Lila shot Dame a look. "Don't ruin it." Dame lifted a hand. "I'm not ruining it. I'm translating." And across the void, Emperor Zalthmore finally grasped the shape of his mistake. Earth wasn't primitive. Earth was untrained potential, and now it was trained. The war wasn't over, but the era of easy conquest was, because humans refused the one thing empires require from their targets: submission. Coach DC breakdown. Here's what happened, stripped of the cinematic smoke. What they saw, a divided species, loud, conflicted, primitive, easy to intimidate. What was real, a species that argues in peacetime but coordinates under threat, and once aligned, executes with savage precision. Key OODA turning point. Humans stopped trying to win the war and focused on winning the moment. Deep strike wasn't a battle plan. It was a timed decision, one synchronized action that collapsed the invader's assumption. OODA in plain terms. Observe, the Caltherans broadcasted and assumed. Tight formation. No deep scans. Orient. Earth accepted conventional war was a losing game and reframed the problem. Kill the fleet from inside. Decide. Full commit. No half measures, no leaks, no maybe. Act. 2,000 torpedoes, 1 instant. Then immediate adaptation for the next wave. Hermetic principles used, explicit tactical, mentalism, control the frame, no panic, no fantasy, just clarity and engineering. Cause and effect. The Empire's first move created the chain. Earth chose the cost. Correspondence. The enemy's rigid formation mirrored rigid thinking. Break the assumption, break the fleet. Polarity. Fear was present, but it didn't drive. It was converted into focus. Rhythm bonus, sustainable tempo, rotations, discipline under pressure, no burnout, no collapse. Vibration bonus. Earth raised coordination frequency and disrupted the invader's timing. Takeaway you can apply today. Stop fighting on the field your opponent picked. Change the terms. Win the moment that decides everything. And if you're going to be dangerous, be disciplined about it. Power without restraint is just ego with better tools. The end.